It's easy to romanticize ancient Egypt's golden temples, mighty pharaohs, and shimmering deserts under a blazing sun. But living there, that's a whole different story. Between the scorching heat, deadly diseases, and endless labor under a sky that never showed mercy, survival was a daily battle. Every breath came with dust, every meal with risk, and every life was ruled by forces both human and divine that you could never question. What looks like glory from a distance was up close a struggle most of us wouldn't survive for even a day. If you like sinking into the real, unfiltered side of ancient history, a like or subscribe would be amazing. And tell me where you're listening from. It never stops blowing my mind seeing people from Cairo to California sharing the same story across time. All right, tonight we're stepping into the sands of ancient Egypt, where beauty met brutality and survival meant strength, luck, and a little help from the gods. So, get comfortable, close your eyes, and find out why you wouldn't last a day in ancient Egypt.
You're lying on a straw mat with a linen sheet that's more suggestion than protection. The Nile breeze you were promised in all those travel documentaries. Yeah, it's gone. Probably died sometime around 2800 BC. By the time you stumble outside, the temperature is already flirting with 90 degrees Fahrenheit, or around 32 degrees Celsius. And it's not even mid-morning. The sun doesn't just shine in ancient Egypt, it attacks your linen tunic. Useless. It's like wearing tissue paper in a sauna. And don't even think about sunscreen. There's no aloe vera, no SPF 50, not even a floppy hat with the logo from a beach resort. Ancient Egyptians did have protective oils, but unless you're wealthy or work in a temple, you're not getting any of it. Your best option, smear yourself with mud or crocodile dung, which apparently might keep you from turning into a human torch. Emphasis on might. By midday, the stones under your feet are hot enough to cook lentils. Shade is a luxury. Trees are rare. You might get a little relief hiding behind a mud brick wall, but even that wall is sweating by now. You, on the other hand, look like someone threw you into a clay oven and forgot to set a timer, and you better not complain. Ra, the sun god is watching. And in ancient Egypt, the sun wasn't just weather, it was divine authority. The hotter the day, the more powerful Ra was feeling. So basically, if you're melting, it's a spiritual compliment. In short, surviving one day in ancient Egypt requires hydration, humility, and an ironclad tolerance for feeling like a roast chicken. And this is just the morning. You're finally out of bed, or rather off your scratchy straw mat. And the good news is the Nile is just a short walk away. The bad news, you can already smell it before you see it. Yes, the mighty Nile, the life-giver of ancient Egypt revered as sacred, the reason civilization here even exists. But let's be honest, it also smells like a fish market had a bad breakup with a swamp. The banks are buzzing with flies, frogs, and things that probably shouldn't have legs but do. Still, this is where you bathe. Soap hasn't been invented yet, and even if it had, couldn't afford it. Instead, you lather yourself in the freshest cleansing technology of the day. Sand. That's right. Exfoliation the Egyptian way. Just rub yourself down with coarse grains and call it skincare. It's like nature's sandpaper, but less effective. Washing clothes also done in the Nile. And by washing, we mean pounding them against rocks while praying that a crocodile doesn't mistake your laundry for a tasty midday snack. Oh, and just to make things more fun, let's not forget the occasional sewage runoff from upstream. Remember, people, livestock and the occasional funeral boat all share this river, and yet somehow this is considered clean. You scrub, rinse and emerge feeling slightly less sticky and only moderately more worried about leeches. If you're a city dweller in Memphis or Thebes, you might be lucky enough to use a public basin or cistern, but for everyone else, it's Nile or nothing. And don't expect privacy. This is a public bathing space shared by families, neighbours, livestock, and the odd ibis pecking around your ankles like it pays rent. Water jars are filled and balanced on heads, carried back to your mud brick house before the midday heat turns the clay into toast. It's a daily ritual, spiritual, necessary, and slightly traumatic. So, yes, the Nile is sacred. It feeds you, cleans you, and quenches your thirst. But let's not pretend it's a sparkling oasis. In reality, it's part miracle, part biohazard, and all you've got. By now, you've bathed in the crocodile-infested Nile. You've sandpapered yourself semi-clean, and your body feels like a baked fig. Time for breakfast, the most important and the least glamorous meal of your ancient Egyptian day. Let's set expectations. There are no eggs Benedict, no fruit bowls, and absolutely no iced lattes. Breakfast in ancient Egypt is less of a culinary event and more of a tactical refueling operation. You sit on a low stool if you have one, or just squat in the corner like everyone else. The centerpiece of your meal, bread, lots of it, dense, coarse, and often as chewy as a leather sandal. It's made from emmer wheat or barley, and baked in clay ovens that may or may not be shared by the local rats. And don't be surprised if there's sand in your slice. Not as a topping, just an uninvited ingredient from the grinding stones, a daily dose of minerals, you could say. Then comes the beer. But don't get excited. This isn't crisp, bubbly craft ale. This is thick, cloudy, lukewarm, liquid bread. More porridge than pint. It's packed with calories and vaguely fermented. A medieval smoothie with the faint taste of sour cereal and survival. Even children drink it. Not to be edgy, but because it's safer than water. At least the brewing process boils out the parasites, unlike the Nile, which we've just discussed is basically a petri dish. If you're lucky, and we mean very lucky, you might get an onion or a few dried dates to go with your carbon foam combo. Protein only if someone caught a fish and didn't immediately eat it raw. And as you chew your rock-like loaf and sip your grain sludge, flies buzz around you like it's a buffet, because it is, for them. You swat at them with one hand, hold your cup with the other, and try not to think too hard about the fact that this is likely the best meal you'll have today. Breakfast in ancient Egypt isn't about flavour, it's about function. It fuels your body just enough to survive, until the next time someone hands you another sand-infused brick of bread. Bon appétit. You've had your gritty bread, your chunky beer, and just enough rest to call yourself functional. Now it's time to work. And trust me, ancient Egyptian labour makes modern burnout look like a spa day, unless you're a scribe, priest or royalty, which, let's be honest, you're not. Your job is pure muscle and dust, no air-conditioned cubicle, no coffee breaks, no ergonomic chairs, just sweat, sand, and a constant risk of collapsing before noon. If you're a farmer, you'll be ankle-deep in Nile mud by sunrise, yanking weeds, or planting barley under the eye of an overseer whose hobby seems to be yelling. You use wooden ploughs, crude sickles, and your bare hands. If your back hurts, congratulations. That means it's working. If you're a labourer, things get even more biblical. Imagine hauling multi-ton stones for temple construction under a blazing sun while barefoot up-ramps made of gravel and prayer. There's no ocean here, you trip. That's a broken ankle and a shrug from the foreman. Working on tombs, that's another level of grind. You're hammering limestone, chiselling out burial chambers for people who will get to rest longer than you ever will. And if you mess up a pharaoh's tomb, let's just say job security might involve a sealed chamber and a curse. And if you're a woman, you're not off the hook. Domestic work is also physical labour. Grinding grain, hauling water, weaving linen, caring for kids, and still helping in the fields. Your break is when the baby naps for 7 minutes. While you prepare dinner, you eat on the go. You wipe sweat with your tunic. You keep moving because slowing down means falling behind. And falling behind means someone else gets your grain quota and you get the blame. There's no clocking out. The sun is your supervisor. When it finally sinks behind the horizon, you crawl home half alive, dust-caked and dreaming of softer sandals and a less aggressive sun god. Work in ancient Egypt isn't just hard, it's endless. It's a full-body commitment to survival day after day until your body gives out or your overseer decides you're not worth feeding. And that's not even the worst of it. After sweating your soul out in the fields or quarry, you might be tempted to grumble. Maybe something small, a little "this job stinks," or "why am I doing this again?" Stop right there. Because in the ancient Egypt, complaining isn't just frowned upon, it's potentially treason. Why? Because your boss isn't just a ruler, he's a literal god. The pharaoh isn't some guy who got elected or born into a lucky family. He's the human embodiment of Horus, son of Ra, chosen by the heavens to rule over Egypt and keep Mahat, divine cosmic order, intact. In other words, if the river floods well this year, thank the pharaoh. If it doesn't, well, maybe you didn't pray hard enough. Questioning his authority isn't just rude, it's blasphemy. Speaking ill of him could land you a date with a whip, a set of shackles, or an early trip to the underworld with none of your favourite burial goods. You see his face everywhere on statues, temple walls, coins, even bread moulds. His name is chanted in rituals. His image is painted larger than everyone else's in every mural. That's not artistic exaggeration. That's law. And don't expect to ever see him. If you're a commoner, the closest you'll get is watching a golden bark float by during a religious festival. Blink, and he's gone. Back to a palace you'll never enter, surrounded by officials, guards, scribes, and enough gold to finance a small civilization, which, fun fact, he basically does. If you're lucky enough to work on a royal project, say a tomb, a temple, or a statue the size of a mountain, you serve with divine joy. At least that's what the state says. You say it too because pretending you're honoured to carve stone for 14 hours a day is safer than the alternative. And don't even think about rebellion. Pharaohs crush uprisings faster than you can say dynasty. Just ask the last village that tried to withhold taxes. Oh wait, you can't. It no longer exists. So, yes, the pharaoh is divine. And you? You're just lucky to be allowed to sweat in his name. Now get back to work. If you thought surviving under the sun was hard, just wait until you realise that in ancient Egypt, sand is your roommate, co-worker, seasoning and mortal enemy. It's everywhere. In your clothes, in your bed, in your food. There is no escaping it. You could be working, praying, sleeping, or minding your own business in the market. And suddenly a gust of hot wind sweeps by and turns your face into a grainy exfoliation experiment you didn't ask for. Let's start with the clothes. You wear linen. It's light, breathable, and about as effective at keeping sand out as a screen door is at holding back soup. It slides down your tunic, clings to your skin, and somehow finds its way into places you didn't know had creases. Eating? Good luck. Every loaf of bread is basically a sand trap. Since flour was ground between stone slabs, little bits of grit made their way into the dough. Egyptians didn't just eat their wheat, they ate their millstones too. It's why ancient dental remains are often worn flat like river rocks. Imagine chewing your breakfast while also filing your mares daily. And if you thought your house was a sand-free zone, think again. Your mud brick home has gaps, crevices and windows with no glass. Perfect portals for wind-blown sand. Your floors are covered. Your cooking pots are full. Your bed is basically a sand pit disguised as furniture. Shoes optional at best. Most Egyptians walked barefoot, meaning you're always one step away from turning your feet into battered leather sandals. If you do have footwear, it's usually a basic pair of sandals made from reeds. Fashionable, perhaps. Protective? Not remotely. Then there are sandstorms. Egypt's version of a slap from the gods. Sudden, swirling, blinding. One moment you're talking to a friend, the next you're spitting dust and feeling like someone dumped an entire beach into your eye sockets. Visibility drops to zero, and everyone around you turns into vaguely coughing silhouettes. In short, sand is the roommate who never leaves, the spice in every meal, and the silent enemy of your eyes, lungs, and dignity. It's not just the backdrop of your life, it's part of your body now, and no, you can't wash it off. You already tried in the Nile, which is probably full of more sand. In ancient Egypt, religion isn't just a weekend activity. It's the operating system for everything. Your job, your diet, your hygiene routine, your bedtime rituals, all dictated by gods who seem to have very specific opinions. First, understand this. The gods are everywhere. Your town has temples to a dozen different deities, each responsible for some vital function. There's Ra, who pilots the sun across the sky like it's a divine Uber. He's headed god of wisdom, is in charge of scribes and moon calendars. Sobek, part crocodile, part nightmare fuel, guards the Nile. And Bastet, the cat goddess, basically runs public relations. Forget personal freedom. Your daily routine revolves around pleasing them. Wake up, thank Ra, spill some beer, apologise to Hathor, stub your toe, curse quietly, or risk attracting a spirit with a grudge. Before meals, you offer a bit of food to the gods. Before bed, you pray that Set, god of chaos, doesn't toss your house into existential disarray overnight. Even funerals are multi-day affairs where the deceased must pass tests, avoid demons, and prove they were morally decent or risk eternal erasure. Speaking of the afterlife, ancient Egyptians took it very seriously. You don't just die and move on. You must pass a judgment process involving your heart being weighed against a feather of truth. If your heart's heavier because of lies, cruelty, or maybe stealing someone's goat, you're eaten by Amit, a creature with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the legs of your worst nightmare. So yes, even in death, you're still on probation. But here's the twist. This complex belief system isn't depressing, it's comforting. Egyptians believed life was part of a cosmic balance, and if you followed the rituals and upheld Mahat, the principle of truth and order, you had a chance at a peaceful eternity, complete with food, family, and maybe a boat. Of course, the richer you were, the more God seemed to notice you. Temples were massive, priests were powerful, and peasants, well, they just hoped the gods were feeling generous that day. because in ancient Egypt, faith isn't optional. It's your job description, your insurance plan, and your travel itinerary for the next life. So, you've stepped on something sharp, got bit by something weird, or caught something contagious, which in ancient Egypt is basically Tuesday. Time to seek medical care. Just don't expect a waiting room or a sterile environment. You're about to be healed with a combination of spells, herbs, and sheer optimism. First, you'll be taken to a doctor. And to be fair, they were some of the most advanced in the ancient world. They had surgical tools, medical texts, and a decent understanding of anatomy. But here's the catch. Science in ancient Egypt always came with a heavy dose of magic. You're given a pus made of honey, mouldy bread, and crushed herbs. Honey actually is antibacterial, and mould has early penicillin properties, so it works sort of. But before applying it, the healer will chant a protective spell just to be safe, because you never know when your stomach cramps are actually the result of a spiteful ghost or an angry god. Have a headache? You might get a dose of crushed onions rubbed into your scalp while someone recites a hymn to thou. Let's smear cow dung mixed with dates on your chest and see what happens. Eye infection. Time for a paste of lizard blood, ochre and beer, plus a prayer to Horus. Surgery. It did happen sometimes. Abscesses were drained, bones were set, and wounds were stitched with linen thread. But there's no anaesthesia. Just a sharp knife and a friend to hold your shoulders down while you scream into a mud brick pillow. Dentistry, not great. Remember all that sand in the bread? Your teeth are worn down by your 20s. If one gets infected, your options are 1, live with it, 2, die from it, or 3, have it pulled with something resembling pliers made by a blacksmith with low standards. And let's not forget the amulets. Whether you're giving birth, getting stitched up, or just sneezing too loud, a good doctor's priest will probably hang a charm around your neck, just in case the real issue is an invisible serpent spirit curled around your spleen. So, yes, Egyptian medicine had its moments, but mostly you'd better believe in the gods, because your band-aid is literally a prayer. Here's a plot twist most people don't expect. Ancient Egyptian women had more rights than many women in later civilizations. They could own property, run businesses, file for divorce, and even take a man to court. Sounds progressive, right? But before you pack your bags for a time-training girl boss vacation, hold up. Because while the legal status might impress you, the day-to-day reality not so glamorous. If you're a woman in ancient Egypt, you probably wake up before sunrise. You're grinding grain by hand using a giant flat stone that chews through both wheat and your spine. Then it's off to haul water from the Nile, cook breakfast, care for children, manage the household, feed animals, and if needed, help in the fields. You're a one-woman workforce in linen. There's no me time, no spa days, and definitely no maternity leave. Childbirth is risky and painful. Midwives are helpful, sure, but there are no epidurals, no disinfectant, and no push playlists featuring relaxing harps. You give birth in a hot room with incense, prayers, and hopefully not too much bleeding. Let's talk fashion. Linen dresses are light and breathable. There's no underwear and no shoes. The sun scorches your skin, the sand grinds into everything, and the bugs think you're an all-you-can-eat buffet. Want makeup? Great. Egyptian women did wear cosmetics, but it's lead-based and applied with sticks that look suspiciously like toothpicks. Now, if you're lucky enough to be born into a wealthy family, things are better. You might read, write, manage estate accounts, or become a priestess. If you're born royal, you could even become pharaoh like Hatshepsut or Cleopatra, who ruled with brilliance and terrifying eyeliner. But if you're poor, your status may be legal, but your reality is physical. You work, sweat, bend, carry, birth, bury and pray. You're not chained by law, but by survival. Still, Egyptian women had agency, and that mattered. They could speak in court, keep their inheritance, and didn't become property when they married. Compared to many ancient societies, that's huge. So yes, Egyptian women had rights, but comfort, that's reserved for statues and goddesses. Not the woman elbow deep in dough while swatting flies off a toddler. You made it through another grueling day in ancient Egypt. You ate your gritty bread, hauled your buckets, avoided divine wrath, and maybe even dodged a sandstorm. Time to relax, right? Wrong! Because in ancient Egypt, your real test begins after you die. Death isn't the end. It's just the beginning of an incredibly bureaucratic, multi-phase journey through the underworld. And if you thought the labour overseer was strict, wait until you meet the gods of judgment. First, your soul takes a trip to the Hall of Mayhat. Here, before a tribunal of 42 deities, you must proclaim your innocence in what's basically the oldest legal deposition in history. You say things like, I did not steal, I did not lie, I did not covet my neighbour's donkey, all while hoping the gods buy it. Then comes the heart test. Literally, your heart, believed to be the seat of the soul, is placed on a scale opposite the feather of Mahat, the symbol of truth, justice, and balance. If your heart is heavier than the feather, well, that means you've lived a wicked life. Enter a meat, part lion, part crocodile, part hippo, all terrifying. She doesn't arrest you, she doesn't find you, she eats your soul, destroying it forever. No afterlife, no second chances, just eternal non-existence, which in a culture obsessed with eternity is the ultimate punishment. And it gets better. You can doom yourself not just by actions but by words. One wrong confession, one forgotten line during your judgment, and boom, spiritual obliteration. It's like an open book test where failure means getting devoured by a mythological death hybrid. If you do pass, congratulations, you get to enter the field of reeds, a peaceful, idealised version of Egypt where your soul lives forever, with boats, with crops, with family, and presumably with fewer sand fleas. But the stakes enormous. That's why Egyptians obsessed over tomb preparation, funeral rites, and magical texts like the Book of the Dead, a spiritual cheat sheet full of prayers, spells, and helpful tips like don't insult the crocodile god. So yes, the afterlife might be beautiful, but only if you live your life very carefully. One curse word, one unpaid temple tax, and your next stop is lunch for a mit. Sleep tight. If there's one small mercy in ancient Egypt, it's this linen. Blessed, breathable linen. Your entire wardrobe and everyone else's is made from this plant-based fabric. It's light, cool, and lets your skin breathe in the scorching heat. That's the good news. The bad news, that's pretty much where the comfort ends. Whether you're a farmer, builder, priest or vendor, you're wearing the same outfit every day. For men, a short white kilt or loincloth. For women, a straight sleeveless linen dress, sometimes held up by straps, sometimes not. If you're upper class, you might have pleat or beads or fancy patterns. If you're not, it's plain white or slightly greyish, depending on how long it's been since laundry day. Oh, and laundry day. Your hand scrubbing your clothes in the Nile while hoping a hippo doesn't emerge mid-R. Most people go barefoot. Sandals made from woven reeds or leather are reserved for special occasions or temple priests. So, unless you're royalty, expect to spend your days with hot sand between your toes and possibly a sharp rock in your heel. Accessories, absolutely, but mostly functional. Amulets for protection, necklaces to show status, and eye makeup made from powdered coal, which wasn't just for fashion. It helped reduce glare from the sun, and supposedly warded off infections. Yes, even eyeliner had a job in ancient Egypt. But no matter how well you dress, the bugs don't care. Flies, gnats, mosquitoes. They treat your airy outfit as an invitation. You're walking through the day, swatting constantly, rubbing on perfumed oils, and praying that your linen doesn't stick to you like a wet curtain the moment the sun reaches full strength. And of course, your outfit doesn't change with the seasons, because Egypt doesn't really have seasons, just hot and slightly less hot. So, your linen ensemble is basically your year-round uniform, whether it's 110 degrees or a chilly 70-degree evening. So yes, Egyptian clothing was light, elegant, and far more comfortable than what Romans would wear later. But don't let the breezy outfits fool you, because no matter how floaty your tunic feels, your life is still heavy with labour, heat, sand and bugs that refuse to respect your personal space. You've survived another blistering Egyptian day, hauling bricks, dodging sandstorms and praying your linen doesn't disintegrate mid-task. But in ancient Egypt, survival is always temporary, because no matter how tough you are, you probably won't live past 35. Let's break it down. If you make it past childhood, which is already an achievement considering infant mortality rates were sky high, you're thrust straight into adulthood by age 13. Marriage, work and child rearing all start early because honestly you're running out of time. You might die from heat stroke or an infected cut, or childbirth, or crocodiles, or scorpion stings, or bad bread. And forget antibiotics. If you get a fever, the best treatment is honey, herbs, and hoping the gods don't have other plans for your soul. But here's the twist. Egyptians weren't scared of death. They planned for it. In fact, they planned for it better than most people plan for retirement today. If you're rich, you commission a tomb, the ancient version of a 5-star eternity suite. You start saving up grave goods, jewellery, food offerings, perfumes, statues, even tiny servant dolls called shabaptis to do your chores in the afterlife. Think of them as spiritual interns who work while you nap forever. Your body is embalmed, wrapped in linen, stuffed with matron, natural salt, and tucked neatly into a painted sarcophagus. You're buried with a copy of the Book of the Dead, which is less about doom and more like a mystical travel guide, complete with passwords for the afterlife, spells to confuse demons, and instructions for not getting eaten by soul-devouring monsters. If you're poor, well, your tomb is likely a shallow pit in the sand. Your body is wrapped in whatever fabric your family can spare. Maybe a pot or two placed nearby and then covered with earth. No murals, no golden mask, just you and the wind. But even the poorest Egyptians held on to the dream of the afterlife. A peaceful, fertile paradise called the Field of Reeds, where you farm without sweat, eat without hunger, and sail the Nile forever under gentle sunlight. So yes, you'll probably die young in ancient Egypt, but if you lived well, prayed right, and didn't insult too many jackal-headed gods, you just might spend eternity in style. You finally made it to the afterlife, or at least into the tomb. You've been embalmed, wrapped, blessed, and buried. Time to rest in peace, right? Well, not exactly. Because in ancient Egypt, even the dead get robbed. Let's start with a simple truth. Tombs are full of expensive stuff. Gold amulets, jewellery, perfumed oils, carved statues, chests full of linens, and for pharaohs, literal boatloads of treasure, all intended to be taken into the afterlife. But treasure in a tomb is basically an open invitation for someone with a chisel and bad intentions. Tomb robbery was so common that it became a full-time problem. Pharaohs tried to fight it by hiding their tombs deep in cliffs, locking them behind trapdoors and scrawling terrifying curses on the walls. Things like, "May a crocodile devour your soul," or "May your limbs be twisted forever by a serpent made of fire." Spoiler, the curses didn't work. Grave robbers came anyway at night in secret with inside knowledge. Sometimes they were locals, sometimes they were corrupt workers who helped build the tombs. In some cases, even priests and guards were in on it, and the punishment for getting caught severe. Think public beatings, mutilation, exile, or death. But considering how valuable tomb goods were, especially gold and rare incense, the risk often seemed worth it. After all, the dead don't fight back. But it's not just the wealthy who got robbed. Even commoners' graves were disturbed. Poorer Egyptians might have been buried with a small pot of beer or a loaf of bread for the afterlife. That was still worth stealing. Food was scarce, tools were valuable, and linen was currency. The irony, tomb robing wasn't just about greed. Sometimes it was about survival. Egypt went through famines, political collapse and invasions. A hungry worker might break into a tomb not for treasure but for food. And when your children are starving, a few funeral offerings look less like sacred objects and more like dinner. So in ancient Egypt, you're not safe just because you're dead. Your tomb can be looted, your name erased, and your mummy unwrapped by some desperate soul with a pickaxe and poor moral judgment. Rest in peace. Only if no one knows where you're buried. We've all seen them. Those majestic, mysterious carvings on the walls of temples and tombs. Birds, eyes, snakes, lotus flowers, men walking sideways like they're on a fashion runway. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Visually stunning and insanely difficult to learn. Sure, they look cool, but try reading them. Hieroglyphs weren't just decorative art. They were a full-blown writing system with over 700 characters and growing. Some symbols represent entire words. Others are sounds, and many are determinatives which clarify meaning because, writing the word star with an actual star symbol might be too straightforward. And don't expect spaces or punctuation. Ancient Egyptian writing was basically one long, beautiful riddle with artistic flair, 0 vowels, and a deep need for context. Oh, and it can be written left to right to left, or top to bottom, depending on what the scribe felt like that day. The trick: look at which way the birds or people are facing. That's your reading direction. If they're facing right, read right. Facing left, read left. And if they're upside down, good luck. Learning to write hieroglyphs wasn't for commoners. Literacy was rare. Maybe 1% of the population could actually read and write. If you wanted in, you had to become a scribe, which meant years of intense education, starting as a child. You'd memorize hundreds of symbols, copy endless scrolls, and practice so much that your hand probably curled into a claw by age 15. But the payoff? Huge. Scribes were respected, well-fed, and never made to haul bricks under the sun. Instead, they wrote tax records, court documents, letters, and religious texts. They were essential to society and protected from most manual labour. In a world where writing was power, scribes ruled quietly from the shadows. For the rest of the population, though, writing was something magical. Literally, hieroglyphs were believed to have sacred power. Writing someone's name preserved their soul. Erasing it, total spiritual annihilation. So, yeah, spelling really mattered. So while hieroglyphs may look like ancient emoji, they're more like a linguistic Rubik's Cube wrapped in myth, math and mystery. Beautiful. Yes. Easy to learn. Absolutely not. After 14 chapters of heat, hunger, sand, superstition and back-breaking labour, it's time to ask the big question. Would you survive a single day in ancient Egypt? Let's be honest. Probably not. Sure, it's easy to romanticise the ancient world. Golden tombs, lotus-scented air, graceful hieroglyphs, gods with animal heads, and a thing for order and beauty. But behind the iconic monuments and stunning art was a world of brutal realities that spared no one but the elite. Your average Egyptian day started with a dirt floor, a cloud of flies, and the knowledge that if you didn't work, you didn't eat. You walked barefoot on blazing sand, hauled water, cooked over open fires, lived shoulder to shoulder with bugs, smoke and livestock. You worried about disease, divine punishment, and whether a snake might slither into your sleeping mat. You had no toothpaste, no medicine, no retirement plan, and if you were lucky, maybe 2 changes of linen. You served a god-king who could take your land with a decree, a climate that cooked your skin by noon, and a religion that required you to pass a literal divine test after death just to get into the good version of the afterlife. Let's also not forget the things you didn't have. No antibiotics, no sunscreen, no privacy, no plumbing, no painkillers, and no easy escape. Once you were born into your class, that was it. No promotions, no career changes, no finding yourself. You were either a scribe, a farmer, a labourer, a mother, a servant, or dead. And yet, for all this, the ancient Egyptians weren't miserable. They believed deeply in their gods, their purpose, and the beauty of life. They loved music, dance, food, family, and festivals. They joked, they painted, they imagined eternity with enough clarity to build stone monuments that still stand today. But for a modern person, without your air conditioning, your filtered water, your Advil, your sneakers, and your smartphone, you'd fold before the second sandstorm hit. So, no, you wouldn't last a day in ancient Egypt. But that's okay because they lasted thousands of years. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we still talk about them. In the heart of ancient Teotihuacan, one pyramid refuses to be forgotten. Its surface is adorned not with peaceful symbols of faith or gentle gods, but with snarling open-mouthed stone serpents, dozens of them. They jut out from the temple's facade as if frozen in mid-strike, fangs bared, eyes wide. This is the temple of the feathered serpent, known to many as the Temple of Quetzalcoatl. But unlike most temples that reach for the sky with reverence, this one feels different. It feels predatory. From the moment you approach it, there's an eerie sense that you're being watched. The stone serpent heads aren't mere decoration. They were warnings, symbols of divine wrath. And beneath their gaze, something horrific once unfolded. Excavations over the past few decades have revealed something that archaeologists didn't expect. Hidden beneath the temple's base were not just ceremonial offerings, but something far more disturbing. Human remains, and not a handful. Over 200 bodies, many of them decapitated, hands bound behind their backs. Young men, warriors perhaps, buried in groups. Ritual sacrifices arranged with mathematical precision. Some were buried with obsidian knives at their sides. Others with necklaces made of human teeth or jewellery crafted from jawbones. They weren't simply thrown into the ground. They were deliberately placed in positions of symbolic significance. It's clear this was no mass grave. It was a message, a divine transaction carved into stone and sealed with blood. But what kind of belief system justifies such horror? Who demanded so many lives be taken at once? The Temple of the Fathered Serpent wasn't just a religious building, it was a theatre of power, a place where rulers fused cosmology, warfare and fear to maintain control over a city of more than 100,000 souls. And this ritual bloodletting may have been the cost of keeping the cosmos in balance. As you stand before this temple today, gazing at those stone serpents, you're not just looking at art or architecture. You're looking into the eyes of a civilization that believed the gods needed blood and that they had every right to deliver it. But who were these people? Who commanded such violence and vanished without a trace? The answer lies in the shadows of Teotihuacan. Before the mighty Aztec Empire, before the Maya carved their cosmic calendar into stone, there stood a city unlike any other in the ancient Americas, Teotihuacan. Its name, given by the later Aztecs, means the place where gods were born. And when you walk its immense Avenue of the Dead, flanked by pyramids that scrape the heavens, you start to understand why. At its height around 100 to 250 CE, Teotihuacan was a sprawling metropolis of over 100,000 people, making it one of the largest cities in the world at the time, rivaling ancient Rome, Alexandria and Chang'an in size and influence. It was a city meticulously planned, wide boulevards, gritted streets, apartment compounds housing extended families, multi-story structures made from volcanic stone, and at the centre of it all 3 massive pyramids. The Pyramid of the Moon, the Pyramid of the Sun, and the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. But here's what makes Teotihuacan different. No one knows who built it. Seriously, to this day, we don't know the name of the people who constructed this place. We don't even know what they called themselves. There are no written records, no kings' names carved into stone. Teotihuacan seems to have been a society ruled not by a single monarch, but perhaps by a council, a theocracy, or something altogether foreign to our understanding of ancient power. And despite this anonymity, their influence was colossal. Evidence of Teotihuacan's power has been found hundreds of miles away from the Maya cities of Tikal and Copan to the distant Zapoch capital of Monte Alban. Obsidian blades, ceramic styles, murals, and even political meddling. In one case, Teotihuacan emissaries may have helped overthrow a local Maya king to install a ruler more favourable to their interests. But how did they maintain such a vast network? How did a city with no known writing system command such authority across Mesoamerica? The answer may lie in how they combined cosmic ideology with statecraft. Their temples were more than places of worship. They were tools of control, aligning perfectly with astronomical events, serving as theatres of ritual sacrifice, and reminding every citizen and every visitor that Teotihuacan was no ordinary city. It was the axis of the world, a sacred engine that kept time, fate and blood flowing in sync. And at the heart of it all stood the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. To understand the temple, we must first understand the deity it was dedicated to, the Feathered Serpent. Known later by the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl and to the Maya as Kulkin, this figure is one of the most enigmatic gods in all of Mesoamerican mythology. But in Teotihuacan, centuries before the Aztecs rose to power, the Feathered Serpent was already a central, possibly supreme divine force. But here's the paradox: what kind of god is both a serpent and a bird? Think about that. Serpents slither through the underworld. They shed their skin, symbolizing rebirth, duality and death. Birds soar high in the sky. closer to the sun, representing freedom, divinity, and life-giving wind. To combine these two, earthbound and sky-dwelling, death and life, chaos and order, was to create something entirely cosmic, something terrifyingly powerful. The feathered serpent wasn't just a god, he was a bridge between worlds. On the facade of the temple, carved in deep relief, we see dozens of his images: goggle eyes, bared teeth, plumed headdresses. Some historians believe these represent the god himself. Others suggest they're warriors or priestly figures adorned in divine regalia to signal their authority. Either way, they are everywhere. The temple is covered in these snake-bird hybrids as if the structure itself breathes with divine presence. But the feathered serpent wasn't just a god of the heavens. He was intimately tied to sacrifice. Blood was the fuel that kept the cosmos in motion. And Quetzalcoatl, though later remembered as a gentle civilizing deity, had a much darker role in Teotihuacan. He demanded offerings, and not just of maize or incense, but of life itself. In some myths, he descended into the underworld to retrieve the bones of the dead and create humankind. But to bring life from death, there had to be a trade. The gods sacrificed themselves for humanity, and humans in return were expected to do the same. Sleep now. Let yourself sink deeper into that perfect relaxation. Your eyelids are heavy. So heavy it would take too much effort to open them now. Your limbs feel pleasantly weighted, impossible to move even if you wanted to, which you don't. You just want to drift all the way down into deep, restful sleep. That's it. Just let go completely. The day is done. The work is finished. Nothing more required of you now except to rest, to renew, to dream perhaps of different possibilities, different worlds. But for now, just sleep deep and peaceful, easy and calm. Sleep now. Sleep well, drifting deeper with each breath down and down into perfect, complete rest.